All elite wrestling is crumbling right in front of our eyes. The company is gaining a bad reputation and losing much of the goodwill it had when it officially started in 2019. Why is that? Number one, wrestlers in AEW don't respect Tony Khan.
Tony, don't tell me down, you piece of shit! Shut your mouth! Look at me, Tony! Look at me! I want you to fire me! You fucking mark! Fire me! Fire me!
CM Punk famously said,
How would you describe what it's like working for Tony?
He's not a boss. He's a nice guy. And I think ultimately that is a detriment to the company. But it's not my company.
it's clear to see that a lot of wrestlers in AEW do not respect their boss. They are constantly and publicly airing grievances about him, directly disobeying and challenging him, and in some cases, MJF, I'm looking at you, directly insulting him. It's not just a matter of isolated incidents, it seems to be a pattern of behavior. Number two, losing CM Punk and Cody Rhodes. These two were like the anchors that kept the AEW ship steady. Ever since they left, the ship has lost control. AEW allowed two of its biggest wrestlers to leave the company and be snapped up by WWE, which is currently making a lot of money because of those two names. The departures of these two left a significant void in AEW, a void that the current roster, despite some additions, has struggled to fill. It's not just about replacing star power, it's about replacing the specific kind of star power that Punk and Rhodes brought to the table. They were more than just wrestlers. They were key figures who resonated with a particular segment of the audience and contributed to the overall identity of AEW. While AEW has signed other wrestlers, they haven't effectively replaced the unique qualities that Punk and Rhodes brought to the company. Signing established names isn't enough. They need to be the right established names, wrestlers who connect with the audience in a similar way and can fill the specific roles that Punk and Rhodes occupied. Simply adding bodies to the roster doesn't automatically translate to increased viewership or renewed interest. Edge, Paul White, Jeff Hardy, and Matt Hardy are good examples of wrestlers that AEW signed for shock value, without actually thinking through how they fit into the roster and the value they would add. The shock value wears off, and the wrestler becomes just another name on the roster. These signings were not integrated thoughtfully into the roster and creative plans. The biggest issue is the lack of clear creative direction for some of these signings. They're brought in for their name value, but there's no long-term plan for how to utilize them effectively. While legends can add value to a promotion, relying too heavily on them can be a trap. It can create a sense of nostalgia, but also prevent the company from building new stars for the future. There needs to be a balance between honoring the past and investing in the future. AEW's reliance on familiar faces from WWE, while initially exciting, has become a double-edged sword. It's like a nostalgia trip that has become boring, repetitive, and predictable. Think of it as a greatest hits album. It's great to hear those classic tracks, but eventually you crave some new material. AEW's strategy seems to be centered around chasing those fleeting pops and viral moments by trotting out beloved figures from WWE's past. It's a quick fix, a shot of adrenaline to boost ratings or generate headlines. But is it sustainable? Many of these surprise appearances feel forced and inorganic. They're not always integrated seamlessly into existing storylines or used to advance ongoing narratives. Instead, they feel like isolated moments designed to generate a reaction, regardless of their impact on the overall product. It's like inserting a celebrity cameo into a movie just for the sake of it, even if it doesn't make sense within the plot. It's a strategy that needs to be reevaluated if AEW wants to establish itself as a truly unique and sustainable force in the professional wrestling world. AEW favors a fast food style of wrestling, high-flying, hardcore, and extreme matches where wrestlers almost injure themselves trying to get a reaction from the crowd. There's an over-reliance on hardcore gimmick matches. Almost every match is like that. It's as if they are trying to compensate for a lack of creativity by relying on the shock value of dangerous stunts and extreme violence. It's like a chef who only knows how to cook one dish. It might be delicious the first few times, but eventually you crave variety. The over-reliance on these match types creates a sense of sameness and diminishes the impact of the truly special, high-stakes encounters. The more often these types of matches occur, the less shocking and impactful they become. The novelty wears off, and what was once considered edgy and exciting becomes routine. High-flying and hardcore wrestling carries a significant risk of injury. Constantly pushing the boundaries of what's physically possible puts wrestlers' health and well-being in jeopardy. This is not only ethically questionable, but it can also have long-term consequences for the performers in the company. And we are seeing the consequences of this as wrestlers are injured seemingly every other day in AEW. AEW needs to find a better balance between spectacle and storytelling, and they need to showcase a wider range of styles to appeal to a broader audience. Relying solely on extreme matches is a short-sighted strategy that will eventually lead to diminishing returns and can even be detrimental to the long-term health of the performers in the company. AEW's championships, while intended to signify prestige and competition, have ironically created a sense of devaluation. It's like a restaurant with too many menu items. The sheer volume makes it hard to decide what's truly special, and the overall quality has suffered. While championships are meant to be the ultimate prize, too many of them can dilute their significance and make them feel less meaningful. When every division, subdivision, and even specific match type has its own championship, the titles lose their aura of exclusivity. They become less like rare and coveted achievements and more like participation trophies. This championship inflation diminishes the prestige of all the titles, including the World Championship, which should be the ultimate symbol of success. It has made it confusing for casual viewers who don't understand the distinctions between the various titles or why some are considered more important than others. Ultimately, the overabundance of titles has diminished the specialness factor. Championships should feel like rare and significant accomplishments. They should be the culmination of hard work, dedication, and compelling storytelling. When there are too many titles, they lose that sense of importance and become just another prop in the show. The company currently has the AEW World Championship, the AEW TNT Championship, the AEW International Championship, the AEW Continental Championship, the World Tag Team Championship, the World Trios Championship, the AEW Women's World Championship, and the AEW TBS Championship. And that's without mentioning the 7 other championships in Ring of Honor. It's frustrating to watch a company with so much potential seem oblivious to its own self-inflicted wounds. AEW's approach feels less like strategic growth and more like a frantic attempt to plug holes with whatever's available. They're like a ship taking on water, and instead of fixing the leak, they're just throwing more buckets overboard. This lack of self-awareness is the most troubling aspect. The constant influx of new talent is like a collector who keeps buying new items without ever displaying or appreciating them. The roster has become bloated, and many wrestlers are lost in the shuffle, lacking meaningful storylines or opportunities to shine. It's quantity over quality, and it's diluting the impact of everyone on the roster. The biggest problem is the lack of a clear plan for integrating these new signings and match styles into the overall product. It's as if they're signing wrestlers and booking matches without any thought to how it fits into the larger narrative. This leads to disjointed storytelling, wasted potential, and a sense of randomness. The ultimate consequence of these issues is the dwindling crowds and a lack of audience engagement. Fans are becoming disillusioned with the repetitive booking, the bloated roster, and the lack of compelling storylines. They're voting with their feet, and the empty seats are a stark reminder that something needs to change. This pattern of behavior creates a vicious cycle. AEW tries to address its problems by signing more wrestlers and booking more extreme matches, but this only exacerbates the underlying issues. It's like treating the symptoms instead of addressing the disease. Until AEW takes a step back and reevaluates its overall strategy, the decline is likely to continue. The most crucial thing AEW needs is a dose of self-reflection. They need to honestly assess their strengths and weaknesses, identify the root causes of their problems, and develop a coherent, long-term plan for growth. It's not enough to just keep doing what they've been doing. They need to be willing to change course and try new approaches. In short, AEW's current trajectory is unsustainable. Until they address these issues head-on, the company's future remains uncertain. Join the conversation and let me know what you think in the comments down below, and click the video on screen now for more Curiosity Thread wrestling content.